Booktube, it's Leah Cooper here, and today I'm bringing you a review of The Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden. I received a copy of this book from the publisher via NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. All of my opinions are 100% my own. You know the drill. So, a quick bit of background information. The Winter of the Witch is the third book in the Winter Nights trilogy by Katherine Arden. It's Katherine Arden's debut trilogy. It began with The Bear and the Nightingale 2 years ago and continued with The Girl in the Tower last winter, and the third and final book, The Winter of the Witch, has just come out on January 8th, I believe. Just a couple of days ago from when this video should be going up. This trilogy is a work of fantasy, fairy tale, historical retelling. It's rooted in real historical events taking place in 12th or 13th century Russia, dealing with a young woman named Vasilisa, who, as a young girl living in the wilds of Rus, I don't know actually how to say that, like the historical form of Russia. Anyways, while growing up in her father's house, discovers that she can see the domovoi and the spirits of the wild and interact with them, and takes it upon herself to kind of honor the old ways of her people. She becomes embroiled in the eternal struggle between the brothers of basically life and death, the bear and the frost demon Morozko, the latter of which tries to use her to keep himself in memory and in power. And the series as a whole is kind of a contemplation of the struggle between early Catholicism and the way it fought back and tried to suppress and kind of stamp out pagan beliefs. This third book picks up pretty much the second after the second book left off in a Moscow that has been set on fire, and during Vazia's struggle with the wizard Kashai the Deathless, which was the central conflict in the second book, starts off with, a good old-fashioned witch burning. The rest of the book follows Vazia's flight from Moscow as she goes into Midnight Country to discover more about herself, where she comes from, her mother's legacy, her grandmother's legacy, and her place in the world. So I gave this like 3.5, 4 stars. As I've sat with it, my rating has kind of settled closer to 3.5 stars. I think it's a good book. I did enjoy reading it. I really enjoy Katherine Arden's writing style personally. I think it's just pleasant to read. Like all three of these books have just been fun to sit down with. I love the way Arden weaves together fantasy elements with historical fiction. As I mentioned in my previous reviews, I think the series is really good if you are a fantasy reader who wants to get into historical fiction, or if you're a historical fiction reader who wants to get into fantasy. I think this trilogy is a really good genre crossover between those two genres. Is in this third book, which specifically deals with a conflict between the Prince of Moscow, whose name is escaping me, who is Vazia's cousin in the book, and the Tartars. It is informed by and dealing with events that are historical fact. It's just interweaving in a bunch of fairy tale elements into those historical events. And I like all of those elements. I just kind of struggle with the plotting of this book. So in the first half of the book, we get one plot, and that is Father Constantine from the first book returns to make Vazia's life hell. He's the one who instigates the witch burning I mentioned at the beginning of the book. Vazia escapes this fiery pyre with the help of the bear, who's been released by his brother Morozko in exchange for Morozko's banishment, with the understanding that the bear will ensure that Vazia doesn't die. And so we have Vazia fleeing Moscow, journeying into midnight, discovering who her great-grandmother is, learning some stuff about herself, learning some stuff about magic, and then setting out to figure out what has happened with Morozko and to free him. And then about halfway through the book, all of those goals are met. That plotline ends. Like, the villains of that entire plotline are vanquished. The goals from the first half of the book are all met, and it's like that could be the end of a book. But then we start out in the second half, and we've got completely new goals, and one of which involves releasing the bear from captivity to enlist his help with the second set of goals. And the book's not very long either. The book is only like 350-ish pages. It's right around there. So it's not incredibly long, which means there isn't a whole lot of time for the author to develop either of these plot lines, since like each of them could easily support separate books. And I know usually here around book 2 we talk about how second books usually feel like filler, and really most series could be condensed down. But this is one of those instances where I think the book is really hurt by the fact that there is so much that the author wants to get done. And really she's driving towards this fight between Russia and the Tartars, which was a real series of historical engagements between those two factions. She just gallops through the plot. I find it very thematically disjointed when Father Constantine's character, and he's been a principal antagonist lurking in the shadows through the second book, and was one of the principal antagonists of the first book. He's wrapped up in like a handful of pages, and that felt very rushed and very unsatisfying. And I think it's always dangerous when you have switchbacks where, like, she conquers the bear, she chains him again, and then a chapter later she's freeing him. When you have turnover in character motivations, character loyalties, character interactions, like, I think it's very ill-planned to the reader. And kind of the more I've thought about the book, the more those sequences of events kind of all mushed together in such a short span of time, we're talking like 25 pages, kind of bugs me. And it reminded me of a problem I had with the second book, which was that I loved the first 75% of the book, or even like the first 85% of the book, but then basically all of the confrontations happened within a chapter, and then the book was done. And I thought that was a real disservice to Koschei the Deathless character, because his character was really good, and the book had been slowly developing, and then I feel like the author just ran out of time writing the last third and just kind of crammed it into a really short space of time. And I kind of feel like that in this book. If she didn't want to split it up into 4 books, I really think that this book needed to be like 200 more pages to deal with everything that was happening. Because she kind of did the same thing at the end of this book, where there's a lot of like, there's a big battle, and it is crammed into a very short span of pages. And so I think the book's fine, but I do think that unfortunately it did not end as strongly as it could have. Another thing that really, really bugged me, and quick spoiler, this will be like the biggest spoiler, I guess, but I mean, we all saw this coming, so spoiler. There is a moment when Vasia finally hooks up with Morozko, and we finally get some like payoff for the flirtation that's existed between them since the first book, but it happens at about the 40% mark, and it exists for about a chapter, and then Morozko exits stage left and does not appear again until the end of the book. And so we get no time really to be satisfied with that consummation between their characters. That's one of the things that I was really invested in this book, because I really liked the push-pull between them. Like, they had to hook up, but I wanted to see how it was going to happen. It was kind of like the romance in Uprooted. Like, they had to hook up, but, you know, I wanted to, like, see them struggle and strive together before they really kind of got there. And we've gotten the struggle and surviving, but then it was almost like a footnote when they actually get their shit together and bang, and then it's over, it's done, and it, like, really has no bearing or relevance on anything after, again. And it kind of ruined it for me. I won't lie. I kind of feel let down by how it was handled in the book. So spoilers over. Back to the review. I think The Bear and the Nightingale is by far the strongest book in the series. While I enjoyed most of The Girl in the Tower, you can't read it as a standalone, and you can't end the series there. If you're going to read The Girl in the Tower, you kind of have to read The Winter of the Witch. Personally, I'm not sure I would recommend either of them. I would still recommend The Bear and the Nightingale. I think it still is really good. I also feel like it works fairly decently as a standalone, to be honest. There's nothing particularly powerful enough about this third book to make me say you have to read the whole trilogy. However, if you enjoy Katherine Arden's writing, go ahead and give it a try, because she's a very competent writer. I think I will certainly check out more things by her as they come out, and I hope that with more time and maturity, her plotting and pacing will improve. I kind of suspect that books 2 and 3 in this trilogy are products of being rushed, and it is what it is. So anyways, I still gave it a 3.5-ish stars, and I'm still glad I read them. So anyway, those are my thoughts on The Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden. I think I covered everything I wanted to mention. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave those down below. Let me know if you've read any of this series, or if you're thinking about picking it up, and what you thought about it. I don't want to like discourage anyone from picking up this trilogy, because I do genuinely really love The Bear and the Nightingale, and I would just love to put that into a lot of people's hands. But no trilogy is perfect, unless it's N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth trilogy. So anyways, thank you for watching. If you enjoy any of my content or my book reviews, be sure and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos, because I am really working on making more content this year. I am very determined to do that. I will see you guys in my next video, which will probably be another book review.